Leaving your real estate to your children could be one of the most detrimental things you ever done to your portfolio if you don't have the conversation. Individual wealth can literally be gone with a weekend in Vegas, a bad marriage, and a drug habit. How do you avoid that from happening?
Isn't that the truth right there?
The more money you have, the more chaotic it will be. Have the tough conversation before it happens.
So, and on this particular show, we're so focused on the dadding portion of the engagement, and that was really what I liked about what you said on Hunter's podcast. So, you had this experience from your father.
Yep.
It was, hey, physical labor breaks your body. For your education with your kids, and are you able to share, what, how many kids you have, and how your financial education goes with them?
Yeah, this is for me. One thing I always don't get into when I have interviews too much is about my family background, about my children and grandkids, and that's for me more of a personal thing. And the reason why I don't, it's because I like them to have their own identity. But now we're not talking about them directly; we're talking about what I do for them. So yes.
Yeah.
Right. So my thing was my financial education with them started very early. It really didn't hit me until I was in my, let's say, late 30s. So once they were able to understand value of money, I would have them buy things. Well, I would buy things for them. Let's use Christmas, which is a good example. Instead of me just saying, I'm going to give you this money to buy something or get you something for Christmas, I would say, well, what is it in turn that you have that you would now like to either give away or you feel that has value to sell so you can buy you something you want? Like my $10 that I bought or 20 or whatever it is, how can you now turn that into your return of a $10 or $20? I didn't want them to get the mindset of a hoarder where they just had an endless amount of things given to them. I wanted to turn their brain into a business. I always wanted bank accounts when I was a kid. I always had selling the comic books, the baseball cards, and I wanted them to think the same way. So the financial education for me was them taking anything that I bought them that they didn't get use out of. Your job would be to sell it, or your job would be to give it away to a cause. And once they got old enough to understand that the value is in everything around you, that's when they started getting into creating their own businesses. From a very young age, my youngest daughter, because she was more available to me having this knowledge. My older children, I was still working. I knew Verizon. I knew hard work. They knew me as hard work. They knew that I was building something, but they didn't get to enjoy the riches like my youngest. But my goal was for them to have LLCs, for them to understand you need to have ownership of whatever idea you have. You need to have ownership of your name. So for me, it was always they had their name at gmail.com, their name at .com, this company and their name. Because if you don't start at a very young age of showing ownership, I think we tend to build in this entitlement in children, which I witnessed with me achieving. It becomes an entitlement that they don't have to do anything. At what point do you now give them responsibility and stop being the crutch that they can fall on? It's okay for them to scuff their knee because now they're going to figure out what I have to do. I scuff my knee. Let me turn it to a scab. It's going to heal. And how I avoid doing this again. I don't never want to be the crutch for them because I have means. I want to become an answer and a place they come to for information, not just for money. So, excuse me. So I guess more of the education coming with the living trust, right? I understood when I got a living trust that was the biggest thing I can leave for them. It wasn't real estate. It wasn't none of those tools. Because the biggest assumption that I made, and I need to snap out of that, because watching another friend of mine, we assume our children want to be landlords. Leaving your real estate to your children could be one of the most detrimental things you ever done to your portfolio if you don't have the conversation. A lot of them have their own lives to live. And I understood once a friend of mine passed away, he left his portfolio to his two daughters, and they sold his properties for pennies on the dollar. And I know that's not what he wanted, but he didn't leave a trust in place for them. So what I do with my trust, I understood what the Rockefeller scenario was, where he use more of a life insurance policy. We understood he was wealthy. But the mechanism that really created that 13 generations of paying out, which he's up to now, if I'm not mistaken, was creating the life insurance policies, now having that in a living trust, have a living trust for each person in that trust so they can have a life insurance policy. And that's what I have created for my children. When I pass away, my portfolio, most of it's going to be sold. That money is going to go into a brokerage account. That brokerage account will now gain interest for my grandchildren, but a portion of that money will go directly to my children. I don't want to leave them the responsibility of thinking that they're supposed to be landlords. They're supposed to figure out how to handle tenants and things of that nature. So there's a lot of detail that I definitely could go into with the trust. But the most important thing for me is making sure you set up that trust so it not just pays out your children, but your grandchildren and your great grandchildren. How does that look like? Individual wealth can literally be gone with a weekend in Vegas, a bad marriage, and a drug habit. How do you avoid that from happening?
Isn't that the truth right there? Yeah, three ways men can lose money, as they say. What is it?
The
Women,
three L's.
What is it? The
Liquor, ladies, and leverage.
Liquors. There you go. Liquors, ladies, and leverage.
That's a Charles Munger quote.
Is that where it comes from?
Yeah, R.I.P.
So Storm, and if I could ask you to go into this, the Rockefellers is the education that we like. How did the Vanderbilts do it wrong?
Simply the same way. He just left wealth. He left the wealth for his children. Anybody knows Anderson Cooper from CNN? If I'm not mistaken, I think he's the third great grandchild of the Vanderbilts. His mother, I think, was the second, either the third or fourth. But one way or another, he had to work. He has no wealth at all from that legacy of the Vanderbilts. When Vanderbilt died and left his children the money, I think he had 2 sons and 1 daughter, or 3 sons and 1 daughter. I try to be as accurate as I possible, only because we're in a day and age where people don't look for information. They look for you to be wrong, and they don't care how small it is. So I try to be a little accurate. His sons went on to actually transfer. One of his sons actually went on to continuously build the wealth. But he had one son who went and started building the biggest castles that he can, thinking that was going to expand the family's name by building the biggest houses and biggest castles. What that did was start eating into the family's money. So if you do research on that, you realize that these castles that we would start building didn't build the wealth that he thought they would be. And then once their children were born, they had no blueprint. They had no plan at all what to do with the wealth, and they just spent it. And now it ended up where Anderson Cooper now has a great family legacy name, but not the wealth that should have been there behind it, all because they didn't have a trust set up like the Rockefellers have their setup. Imagine that. You're working, your family was once worth, he was worth of excess of $3 billion at one time.
Like the basic structure, at least my understanding is that whatever principle you have in terms of your wealth, right, your net worth, your kids, your descendants are not allowed to touch that. They can only receive dividends, right? And they're allowed to do things to grow the principal balance, like maybe invest somewhere else, but they can't take it and use it for consumption purposes. They can only live off of the dividends. Is that the basic idea behind it?
Well, I like to get this in. I'm not a family estate planner, consult your attorneys and accountants. I just like to speak for what I have done and what my family estate plan has done in my accountants. Yeah, if you set it up that way, because there needs to be ages. Like my first trust, which was done, it had an age limit of 21 that the kids would be able to get money and go to the trustees, because it's set up like a private bank. So they would come to the trustees with a business proposal and borrow money. But due to technology, I said, I need to rearrange that. Now it's set up for the age of 13 because you have younger generations now who, due to the inception of social media and YouTube, they can literally create a business. There are kids who have YouTube channels with unboxing and doing this, and they're making millions of dollars. So I wanted to allow them to have the opportunity to talk to the trustees and say, here's my business model. I need to borrow this much money, and they will pay that money back. The brokerage account pays out the dividends, and now you can set that up where they live off a certain amount of money coming from that brokerage account, depending on the percentage. But the key thing that I like to really put into mind of people, that you have to be a forward thinker. You have to think about, who am I doing this for, and what will the world look like 10 years from now? 10 years from now, AI technology will be at a whole different pace than what it is now. It will be nothing like it is in what we're looking at. So you can't have the trapped off mind where I'm going to wait till you're 28 years old or you're 30 years old and you're going to get your money, and you're not going to get it unless you get married or unless you go to college, and you must, well, school might not be it. College may not be it. You haven't, most of some of my greatest billionaires never went to college or graduated college, if I'm not mistaken. We can name a few. So why would you put that on your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, when they might be able to build wealth because they invented that next thing, that next technology? So be open-minded and have a attorney and have someone who can help you see the vision, because I couldn't at one point. My estate planner literally had to make it clear to me when I said, I want my 3 daughters to be trustees where they can make decisions together on a trust. He said, well, Storm, I'm only here to give you the best advice that I can give you, and that's not going to happen. If you're going to have no, that's
I know, I get it.
She said, she says they have children, and if you set out payments for when one child reaches a certain age and the next one birthday might be next year, and she needs to agree, she might say, well, we might as well wait one more year for the other one's birthday. And then the other one's going to say, well, his birthday is coming up, we might as well wait. And now nobody gets paid. And now they're going to have to argue. And then they're going to have disagreements. I said, damn, you're right. Because I literally saw them doing this. I saw it. So now I had to delegate who can do this, who can do that, who's responsible. And then I left all the responsibility on her to tell them the bad news. That's what she gets paid for. So those are key things to think about for the future. What does it look like? And I would always say, set up a brokerage account separate from your children that they have no power to touch, because it's going to start paying out your grandchildren. Your children should get your insurance policy and your immediate real estate. And that immediate real estate that has a mortgage on it shouldn't be relied on to be paid for by your life insurance policy for your family. I'm just giving you my example. For me, mine has a term policy that's $70 a month to pay the $450,000 remaining on my primary residence. I don't want that to come from my policy, my $1 million policy for my family, because when you die, that mortgage has to be paid off. You need to remember, if that's coming from your life insurance policy and you think you're leaving them $1 million, you're not. You're leaving them $500,000. So get you a term, and when you pass away, have that term pay the mortgage off, and your family gets the remaining, that full life insurance and the remaining balance of that term. See, we don't think about little things like that. And that's important to think about. Also, if you're taking care of your wife's family and you guys are just taking care of giving them monthly income, somebody's in an elderly assistant living and stuff like that, set up a term policy for that so you can pay for that. Think about those other expenses that you're taking care of. So when you're not here, you're not leaving that on your wife or your husband. And another thing I want everyone to do, please, 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 within the sound of my voice, don't die with the combination to the safe. Please leave that information behind. What was your strategy? What was the purpose of the life insurance policies? What is the combination to the safe? Where are the life insurance policies kept? What was the plan for your children? What was the plan? Because we want to do so many great things as men and as women, and we go, I don't worry about it. No, worry. Sit down with your wife, your husband, sit down with your mom, your father. Where's the life insurance policy? Where's the land deeds at? Where's this information? Because when they pass, it's going to be an ugly scene. People are going to want to fight. People are going to come out the woodworks. I don't care how nice your family seems to be. The more money you have, the more chaotic it will be. Have the tough conversation before it happens.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I've met people over the years where there was a death in the family and it caused no term insurance, death. Wife maybe didn't. In fact, I'm thinking of one particular family I knew. The wife never worked, and they had, I think, 4 kids. And husband died, and she had no work experience, had never done anything, and
Wow.
she all of a sudden was saddled with near bankruptcy and had no work experience, and it was a really sad environment. Yeah, that was one that was I always remembered that.